Did you like the whiskey, Dad? That was the question my son Michael asked me over the phone 3 hours after giving it to me for my birthday, and my answer left him silent as a dead man. I gave it to your father-in-law, son. He loved it. My name is Harold Thompson, but everyone calls me Hank. I'm 73 years old, and I worked my whole life as a welder at Johnson Steel Works here in Millbrook, Ohio. For 40 years, my hands held the torch that built structures, tanks, heavy machinery that was shipped all the way to Mexico. These hands that now shake a little with age were once the steadiest in the whole factory. Today is my birthday, 73 years old, and I'm sitting in the living room of my little house waiting for that son who no longer recognizes me as his father, but as a burden. Before I tell you how I managed to teach him the biggest lesson of his life, subscribe and share this story with someone who knows what it's like to be underestimated, because what happened that night changed our family forever. The morning dawned gray, as if the sky knew something bad was going to happen. I got up early, as always, at 5 in the morning. It's a habit you can't shake after 4 decades of waking up before dawn to get to the factory. The alarm clock wasn't necessary anymore since I retired 3 years ago, but my body still wakes up at the same time, like it's programmed in my bones. I made my coffee in the old percolator that Dorothy bought at a garage sale 20 years ago, black and bitter just how I like it, and sat on the porch to watch the sun rise behind the rolling hills of Ohio. My house is small, but it's mine. I bought it with the sweat of years of work, dollar by dollar, overtime shift by overtime shift. 2 bedrooms, a modest living room with furniture we'd collected over the decades, a kitchen that always smells like bacon and fresh biscuits, and this porch where I have my tomato plants and the flower pots that my late wife Dorothy planted before she died. She always said a house wasn't a home without something growing in it. The tomatoes were doing well this year, fat and red, just like Dorothy would have wanted them. Michael had called me the night before to tell me he'd come by in the morning. "Dad, I'll come early to celebrate with you. I have a surprise you're really going to like." His voice sounded different over the phone, like when he was a kid and he'd done something mischievous but was trying to sound innocent. There was something in his tone that made me uncomfortable, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Maybe it was because he hadn't visited me in over 2 months, and now suddenly he wanted to celebrate my birthday. Or maybe it was because he'd been acting strange lately, asking weird questions about my will, about my savings, about whether I got lonely living by myself. At 9 o'clock sharp, I heard his pickup truck pull into the gravel driveway. A white Toyota Tacoma he'd bought last year when he started making better money with his accounting business. Michael was always smart with numbers. Even as a kid he could calculate tips and change faster than a cash register. But lately he'd gotten smart about other things too. Things I didn't like. Things that made me wonder what had happened to the boy who used to help me in my workshop, who used to ask me to teach him how to weld, who used to say he wanted to be just like his old man when he grew up. I heard the truck door slam shut and watched through the screen door as he walked up the flagstone path that Dorothy and I had laid ourselves one summer weekend in 1987. He knocked on the door 3 times. Knock, 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 just like he'd always done since he was a child. Some habits never change, I thought. "Dad, happy birthday." I opened the door and there he was. Michael, my firstborn, 42 years old, well-dressed in a way that made me proud and worried at the same time. He was wearing a blue button-down shirt I'd given him for Christmas, dark Levi's jeans, and polished brown leather shoes that probably cost more than I used to make in a week at the factory. His hair was perfectly combed, and he smelled like expensive cologne. He was smiling, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. It was the kind of smile salesmen use when they're trying to sell you something you don't need. He was carrying a paper bag in his hand, the kind they use at fancy liquor stores downtown. "Look what I brought you," he said, reaching into the bag and pulling out a bottle that caught the morning light. It was an elegant bottle with a gold label, the kind you see in stores but never buy because it costs more than your monthly electric bill. "It's Jack Daniel's Single Barrel, Dad. The best whiskey in Tennessee for the best dad in Ohio." "You get me." A quick hug, uncomfortable, like when you're in a hurry to get somewhere else. "Thanks, son," I said, taking the bottle. It was heavy, cold, and the label gleamed under the morning light like it was made of real gold. "It's very nice, but you know I don't drink much any more," I told him, holding the bottle up to examine it in the light. "Ah, Dad, it's your birthday. One little drink won't hurt you. Besides, that whiskey is special. I had it specially ordered just for you." Something about the way he said "special" made me feel uneasy, like when you're welding and suddenly feel like your mask isn't properly positioned. A sense of danger you can't explain. Michael had always been my pride and joy, the smartest of my 3 kids, the one who'd gotten the scholarship to Ohio State, the one who'd graduated summa cum laude with his accounting degree. When he started Thompson Accounting Services 5 years ago, I'd been so proud I'd told everyone at the American Legion about it. "My boy Michael's got his own business now," I'd say, "handles the books for half the businesses in town." And it was true. His firm had grown from a one-man operation in a rented office above the hardware store to a real business with employees and clients from 3 counties over. Michael drove that new pickup truck, wore pressed shirts, lived in Maple Heights where all the successful folks lived. He'd married Patricia 2 years ago, a nurse from the regional medical center, a pretty blonde girl who smiled a lot but always seemed to be calculating something behind those blue eyes. They had a nice life, the kind of life I'd always hoped my kids would have, better than what I'd been able to give them growing up. But somewhere along the way, something had changed in Michael. Maybe it started after Dorothy died, when he began looking at me differently, like I was a problem that needed solving rather than his father who deserved respect. Or maybe it started when he began asking those strange questions about my finances, about whether I'd made a will, about what would happen to the house and my savings when I was gone. "Do you want to open the bottle now?" he asked, looking toward the kitchen with an expression I couldn't quite read. "No, son, it's too early to drink. Better save it for dinner." I saw his face change for a second. An expression of disappointment, anger even. It was quick, but I caught it. "Okay, Dad, whatever you say." Then he added, "Are you going to be alone today? Is anyone else coming?" "Rose is coming this afternoon. And Javier said he'd stop by after work." "Why do you ask?" "Nothing, just wondering." He settled into the sofa, but he looked restless, like he was in a hurry to be somewhere else, checking his watch every few minutes and glancing at his phone. This wasn't the Michael who used to spend Sunday afternoons with me watching football, who used to ask about my stories from the factory. This was a different man, one who wore success like an expensive suit but somehow looked uncomfortable in it. "Dad, I need to ask you something," Michael said, settling back into the sofa but still looking fidgety, like he had somewhere important to be. "Tell me. Have you made your will yet?" The question hit me like a bucket of cold water. Not because it was strange to talk about those things at my age, but because of the way he asked it. Direct, without any preambles, like he'd been waiting for the right moment to bring up the subject. "Why are you asking me that on my birthday, Michael?" "Well, Patricia and I are thinking about getting married soon, and you have to plan for the future. She says it's important for families to have everything in order." Patricia, his girlfriend of 8 months, always looked at me like she was calculating something, like I was a problem that needed to be solved. Something had been eating away at our family dynamic lately. Michael's visits had become less frequent and more pointed. Instead of asking how I was feeling, he'd ask about my health insurance. Instead of asking about my day, he'd ask about my expenses. Instead of talking about memories, he'd talk about the future, specifically about what would happen when I wasn't around anymore. "My will is in order," I told him. "Everything is divided equally among you 3. The house, my savings, everything." "And how much do you have saved, Dad? I mean, just so we know if it's enough for your expenses." That's when I understood something was very wrong. Michael had never asked about my money so directly before. He'd always been respectful about those things, understanding that a man's finances were his own business. But now there was something different in his voice, something urgent, like he needed to know exact numbers for reasons he wasn't sharing. "I have enough to live comfortably, Michael. Don't worry about that." He stayed quiet for a moment, staring at the whiskey bottle I'd placed on the coffee table. "Dad, you know what? Why don't you open it after all? A quick toast for your birthday. I'm here anyway." Again that strange insistence, like it was very important to him that I drink from that bottle. "Michael, it's 9:30 in the morning. Come on, Dad, it's your birthday. Besides, you're not that young anymore. You have to take advantage of every moment, don't you think?" The way he said, "You're not that young anymore," sounded strange to me, like a threat disguised as a joke. I got up and went to the kitchen for 2 shot glasses. While I was getting them from the cabinet, I felt his eyes following my every movement. When I returned, he already had the bottle open. "Il est pour Dad. You sit down and relax." He poured 2 shots, mine a little fuller than his. "Cheers, Dad. To many more years." We raised our glasses. I was about to drink when I heard someone knocking at the door. "Are you expecting someone?" Michael asked with a face I couldn't decipher. "No," I replied, setting my glass on the table. "Let me see who it is." Michael had never asked about my money so directly before. He'd always been respectful about those things, understanding that a man's finances were his own business. But now there was something different in his voice, something urgent, like he needed to know exact numbers for reasons he wasn't sharing. "I have enough to live comfortably, Michael. Don't worry about that." He stayed quiet for a moment, staring at the whiskey bottle I'd placed on the coffee table. "Dad, you know what? Why don't you open it after all? A quick toast for your birthday. I'm here anyway." Again that strange insistence, like it was very important to him that I drink from that bottle. "Michael, it's 9:30 in the morning. Come on, Dad, it's your birthday. Besides, you're not that young anymore. You have to take advantage of every moment, don't you think?" The way he said, "You're not that young anymore," sounded strange to me, like a threat disguised as a joke. I got up and went to the kitchen for 2 shot glasses. While I was getting them from the cabinet, I felt his eyes following my every movement. When I returned, he already had the bottle open. "Il est pour Dad. You sit down and relax." He poured 2 shots, mine a little fuller than his. "Cheers, Dad. To many more years." We raised our glasses. I was about to drink when I heard someone knocking at the door. "Are you expecting someone?" Michael asked with a face I couldn't decipher. "No," I replied, setting my glass on the table. "Let me see who it is." It was Frank, Patricia's father, a man my age who worked as a mechanic at a shop near the town square. "Harold, happy birthday. I'm here on behalf of my daughter Patricia. She sent me to bring you this cake for your celebration." Frank was a good man. I'd always liked him since I met him a few months ago. How thoughtful. "Come in, Frank. Michael is here." When we entered the living room, he saw Michael's face. He'd gone pale, like he'd seen a ghost. "Hello, Michael," Frank greeted. "Hello, Frank," Michael answered with a strange voice. "Look, Frank," I said, "Michael brought me this bottle of whiskey. Would you like a drink?" And that's where everything changed. Frank saw the bottle and smiled. "Oh wow, Jack Daniel's Single Barrel, that's good stuff. Let's see if you'll share a shot with me." Michael jumped up suddenly. "No, that bottle is special, Dad. I brought it especially for you." But I was already pouring Frank a glass. I don't know why I did it. Something inside me told me I had to do it. It was probably God's way of protecting me, though I didn't know it at the time. After I told Michael that over the phone, the silence was so long I thought the call had dropped. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded different, like something had broken inside him. What did you say, Dad? I gave the whiskey to Frank, I repeated, not understanding why he sounded so upset. He came by this morning to congratulate me, and, well, you know, it's good manners to share a gift like that.
No, 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 Michael murmured.
Did he already drink it? Of course, son. We had a few shots together. That whiskey you gave me was really good. Frank even said he'd never had one that smooth. What followed was something I'll never forget.
Michael started screaming like a desperate madman.
They weren't words. It was like the howl of a wounded animal, like something had been ripped out from inside him.
No, Dad, no.
How much did he drink? How much? His scream was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear.
Michael, what is wrong with you? Are you crazy? Why are you screaming like that? Tell me how much Frank drank.
His desperation was so real, so raw, that a horrible feeling started growing in my stomach, like when you're welding and suddenly the metal cracks and you know something is very wrong. He drank about 3 shots.
Michael, why?
What's in that whiskey?
Another silence.
But this one was different. It was the silence of someone who just realized everything had gone to hell.
Dad, how do you feel?
What do you mean, how do I feel, Michael?
Talk to me right now.
And then the bastard hung up on me. I stood there in the kitchen with the phone in my hand, trying to understand what the hell had just happened. My son, who had arrived that morning smiling with his birthday gift, had just had a panic attack because I told him I'd shared his whiskey with Frank. The bottle was still there on the table, half empty, elegant, golden, with that label that gleamed, but now I was afraid to look at it. I called Frank immediately.
Hello.
Frank, this is Harold speaking.
How are you feeling?
Oh, Harold. Well, honestly, I'm feeling a little sick. My stomach's been upset since I left your house. I thought it was because I ate something heavy for breakfast, but now that you ask, I'm worried.
My blood ran cold.
What exactly are you feeling, Frank? Nausea, dizziness, like I have a fever.
And my head hurts a lot.
Patricia is giving me some herbal tea, but it's not going away.
Frank, where are you now? At my house.
Why? Listen to me carefully. Go to the hospital right now. Have Patricia take you to Millbrook Regional. Tell them it might be poisoning. Poisoning? What are you talking about, Harold? I'll explain later.
Go to the hospital now. Don't waste time. He hung up and sat down in the kitchen chair.
My hands were shaking, but not from age, from rage, from an anger that was rising from my stomach to my throat. My son had tried to poison me, and the worst part was that I understood why. The questions about the will, about my savings, about whether I'd be alone, the rush to get me to drink the whiskey, the look of panic when Frank showed up.
It all made sense now.
Michael wanted to kill me, his own father. I changed clothes, put on my good pants, my white shirt, my work boots. If I was going to confront my son, I was going to go dressed like the man I am. Before leaving, I called Rose.
Dad, how are you?
Did Michael come by? Rose, I need you to come to my house right now. Something very serious is happening. What happened? Not over the phone.
Come and bring Javier with you. Dad, you're scaring me. There is a reason to be scared, sweetheart.
Your brother Michael just tried to kill me. Rose's silence was different from Michael's. It was the silence of someone trying to process something impossible to believe. What did you say?
What you heard.
Michael brought me a bottle of poisoned whiskey for my birthday. Thank God I gave it to Frank instead of drinking it myself. Dad, that can't be true. In an hour I'll prove to you that it is true.
Come to the house.
And Rose. Yes. Bring your phone camera. We're going to need evidence of what's about to happen. I hung up. I grabbed the keys to my old pickup truck and headed to Michael's house. It was time for my son and I to have a very serious conversation, a conversation that was going to change everything forever. Michael's house was in Brookside Heights, one of those new subdivisions where all the houses look alike and have perfect little lawns. When I arrived, I saw that his Toyota truck was in the driveway, but there was also another car I didn't recognize, an old white Honda with Ohio plates. I parked my truck in front of his house and sat there for a moment breathing deeply. 42 years. 42 years that bastard had lived. And I had worked every day of those 42 years to give him the best, so he could study, so he could have clean clothes, new shoes, school supplies, so he could be somebody in life. And this is how he repaid me, trying to kill me. What Michael didn't know was that his old man wasn't just living on Social Security and a pension. For 30 years, while everyone saw Hank Thompson the welder, I'd quietly been buying rental properties, small commercial buildings, and land around town. Nothing flashy, nothing anyone noticed, just smart investments that had added up over the decades. Michael thought he'd inherit maybe $50,000 from a poor old man. He had no idea that the father he was trying to kill for pocket change actually had assets worth more than $400,000. If the fool had just asked for help with his debts, I could have written him a check without even touching my savings. But instead, he'd chosen to see me as an obstacle to remove rather than a father who might help. Now it was time to go inside and have that conversation. I knocked on the door hard, 3 firm knocks that echoed throughout the block. Michael opened the door, but he wasn't the same man who had come to my house that morning. His face was pale, his eyes were red, and his hands were shaking. "Dad, Move aside," I said, pushing him gently but firmly. "We're going to talk inside." I entered his living room. It was nice, with new furniture, a big television, everything very organized, the kind of setup that showed his business success. But sitting there on the sofa was her, Patricia, the nurse, the girlfriend, the accomplice, and next to her a man I didn't know. Skinny, dark-haired, with a rat-like face. He had a medical bag at his feet. "Good afternoon," I said, looking at Patricia first, then at the stranger. "Who are you in this story?" Patricia looked pale, nervous. She got up from the sofa like she had springs.
"Mr. Thompson, Sit down," he told her.
"You're going to listen to what I have to say, too." The skinny man extended his hand to me. "Nice to meet you. I'm Dr. Rodriguez."
"I'm a friend of Patricia's."
I didn't shake his hand. "Doctor of what?"
"General Medicine."
"I work at a private clinic." That's when I understood the whole plan.
"Michael, Patricia the nurse, and this doctor. All 3 together. A perfect conspiracy to kill a bothersome old man."
"Michael," I said without taking my eyes off the doctor, "explain to me what the hell you put in that whiskey." Michael sat in a chair far from me, like he was afraid I was going to hit him. And maybe he was right to be afraid. "Dad, I can explain everything." "Then explain."
"I have all the time in the world."
Michael looked at Patricia, then at the doctor, then at me. "It was just to make you sleep, Dad."
"Nothing more."
"To make me sleep." "Yes, to make you sleep deeply." "And then what, Michael?" The doctor cleared his throat. "Mr. Thompson, allow me to explain. What your son put in the whiskey was a very strong sedative. Pentobarbital sodium. In small doses it causes deep sleep. In high doses it kills," I finished. "Exactly." I walked up to the doctor until I was standing right in front of him, very close. "And how much did you put in my whiskey, doctor?" The doctor swallowed hard. "The dose we put in was lethal, Mr. Thompson."
Patricia started crying. Fake crocodile tears.
Mr. Thompson, we didn't want to hurt you. It was just that.
What?
That I was in the way, that you wanted my money, that it would be convenient if I died so you could inherit. Michael jumped up suddenly. It wasn't for money, Dad.
Oh, no?
Then why? Because you don't have quality of life anymore. You live alone. You've been sad since Mom died.
You don't do anything productive anymore.
I slapped him across the face so hard it echoed throughout the house. A dry, strong slap, the kind that leaves a mark. Michael touched his cheek, surprised. I decide when my life doesn't have quality anymore.
I decide when I want to die.
Not you. The doctor opened his medical bag and took out a small vial.
Look, Mr. Thompson, this is the vial of pentobarbital we used.
It's almost empty.
We put 15 millilitri in the whiskey.
That dose would have caused respiratory arrest in less than 2 hours. I took the vial from his hands. And Frank, is he going to have respiratory arrest too? Well, he only drank 3 shots. He'll probably feel very sick. He'll have nausea, dizziness, maybe mild convulsions. But if they get him to the hospital in time— He's already at the hospital, I interrupted them. And when the doctors run tests on him, they're going to find pentobarbital in his blood, and they're going to ask questions, and they're going to call the police. The 3 of them went quiet like they hadn't thought of that possibility. They wanted to kill me, and they hadn't even thought about the consequences.
You know what hurts me the most.
I told them, walking around the living room like a caged lion. It's not that you wanted to kill me. I can understand that. There are some really evil people in this world. I stopped in front of Michael. What hurts me is that it was you, my son.
The boy who not out to ride a bike.
The boy who cried when he got hurt and I'd heal him with rubbing alcohol and cotton.
The boy who used to tell me, when he grow up, he want to be just like you, Dad.
Michael started crying, but I didn't feel sorry for him anymore. The boy I supported when he didn't have work, who I paid for college by selling my work tools, who I lent money to start his business. Patricia tried to speak.
Mr. Thompson, we.
Shut up, I yelled at her. You have nothing to say here. You're not family. You're just a gold digger who convinced my son to kill me. I sat down in front of them. Now you're going to explain the whole plan to me from the beginning. How you were going to explain my death, what you were going to say when they found me dead. The doctor spoke with a trembling voice. We were going to say that you had drunk the whole bottle of whiskey, that it had been an accident, a drinking binge that got out of control. And where were you going to be when that happened? Michael was going to come visit you at night. He was going to find you already dead. And after my funeral, what? Were you going to get married with my money? Michael nodded, crying. We had debts, Dad. The business isn't going well. Patricia has to support her father. We needed— You needed me dead. Yes. And Rose and Javier, were you going to kill them too?
No, just you.
They were going to inherit their share. I stood up and headed toward the door.
Where are you going, Dad?
To call the police. All 3 of them stood up, scared. Dad, no. We're family. I turned toward Michael one last time.
No, Michael, we're not family anymore.
Sons don't kill their fathers, and fathers don't forgive sons who try to kill them. I left the house and walked toward my truck.
Behind me called there Patricia screaming, the doctor talking about having to run away, Michael crying like a child.
But I had already made my decision. This wasn't going to end here. When I got to my house, Rose and Javier were already there waiting for me. I could see them from a distance, sitting in the porch chairs talking quietly. Rose looked worried and Javier looked confused, like he didn't understand why I had called them with such urgency. When I got out of the truck, both of them stood up and came toward me.
Dad, what is happening?
Rose asked. You've got us really worried with that phone call. Sit down, I told them, pointing to the patio table. What I'm going to tell you, you won't believe, but it's the pure truth. Javier looked at me with those eyes he'd had since he was a kid when he knew something was wrong.
Where is Michael?
You said he was going to be here too.
Michael is not coming.
Michael is the problem.
He put the whiskey bottle on the table.
Rose looked at it strangely. It's very nice.
Did Michael give it to you?
Yes, he gave it to me, but not to celebrate my birthday. He gave it to me to kill me. The silence that followed was so heavy you could cut it with a knife. Rose and Javier looked at each other, then looked at me like they were waiting for me to tell them it was a joke. Dad, Javier said slowly, what are you saying? I'm saying that your brother Michael, along with his girlfriend Patricia and a doctor named Rodriguez, put poison in this whiskey to kill me. Pentobarbital sodium, they call it. A dose that would have killed me in 2 hours. Rose covered her mouth with her hands. That can't be true, Dad. Michael would never do something like that. Michael not only would do something like that, he already did it. The only thing that saved him from being a murderer is that I gave the whiskey to Frank instead of drinking it myself.
Frank drank it?
Javier asked, alarmed. 3 shots. And now he's in the hospital because he felt sick. When they run tests on him, they're going to find the poison in his blood.
Rose started crying.
Not Patricia's fake crying, but the real crying of a daughter who just discovered that her older brother is a criminal. But why? Why would Michael do something like that? For money, for the inheritance, because he has debts and thinks I'm not useful for anything anymore. Javier grabbed the bottle and smelled it. And how do you know it has poison? Because I went to his house to confront him, and he, Patricia, and the doctor confessed everything to me. They told me they put 15 milliliters of pentobarbital in it. They told me it was a lethal dose. They told me the plan was for Michael to find me dead tonight and say it had been an accident.
Rose was crying harder now. I can't believe it.
Michael was always the most responsible of the 3 of us. The one who helped you the most.
That Michael doesn't exist anymore, sweetheart.
The Michael we knew died when he decided to kill me. Javier stood up and started walking in circles, like he always did when he was very angry. And what are we going to do? Did you call the police already? Not yet. First I wanted to talk to you too. I wanted you to know the truth before this becomes a scandal. He has to go to jail, Javier said, stopping in front of me. Dad, Michael tried to kill you. That's attempted murder.
It can't just stay like this.
Rose stopped crying for a moment. But he's our brother, Javier. No, I answered. He's not our brother anymore. Brothers don't kill each other. Sons don't kill their fathers.
Sons of bitches, Javier muttered.
Sorry, Dad, but I don't have other words.
There is nothing to forgive, son. I'm thinking much worse things. Rose grabbed my hand.
Dad, what are we going to do? What we have to do. Call the police, file a complaint, and let justice do its job. But are you prepared for that? Javier asked. To report your own son, see him taken away in handcuffs, go to trials, testify against him? I thought about it for a moment. It was a good question. Was I prepared to see Michael in jail? Was I prepared for all of Millbrook to know that my son had tried to kill me? Yes, I said finally. I'm prepared because if I don't do it, Michael is going to try to kill me again, and next time I might not be so lucky. Rose nodded.
You're right, Dad.
If he's capable of doing this once, He's capable of doing it again. Besides, I added, Frank is in the hospital because of Michael. That man could have died from drinking my poisoned whiskey, and even if he recovers, he's going to have lasting effects. The doctors told me that pentobarbital can cause neurological damage. Have you talked to Frank? Javier asked. I talked to him before going to Michael's house. He was very sick. His daughter took him to Millbrook Regional. When the doctors run tests on him and find the poison, they're going to file a report and investigate where that poison came from. And if Michael runs? Rose asked. He won't run. He's too much of a coward to run. Besides, where would he go? He doesn't have enough money. That's why he wanted to kill me.
Javier stood up again.
Well, then let's go. Let's go to the police right now. Wait, I said. Before we go, I need you to help me with something.
What?
I need Rose to record everything I'm going to say. A complete testimony, from beginning to end, in case something happens to me. Rose looked at me scared. Why are you saying that, Dad? Because Michael already tried to kill me once. And people like him, when they feel cornered, can do anything. Do you think he's going to hurt you? I don't know, but it's better to be prepared. Rose took out her phone. Okay, Dad. I'm going to record everything. And Javier, I continued, I want you to take this bottle to the forensic lab, have them analyze exactly what it contains. We need scientific evidence. But isn't the police supposed to do that? Yes, but I want to have my own evidence just in case. Rose already had her phone ready. Should I start recording? Yes, but first let me tell you something else. I looked at both of them. My two good children, the ones who had never given me problems, the ones who had always respected me, the ones who had never thought about hurting me.
No matter what happens with Michael, you will always be my children.
And you're going to inherit everything I have, just like it was always planned. Dad, don't talk about that right now, Rose said. Yes, we have to talk about it because Michael is no longer going to inherit anything. A son who tries to kill his father doesn't deserve any inheritance. Have you already changed the will? Javier asked. Tomorrow I'm going to change it. Today we're going to file the complaint. Tomorrow I'll fix the legal papers. Okay, Dad, Rose said.
Whatever you decide.
Now, yes, start recording because this is going to be a very long war and we're going to need all the evidence we can get. When we arrived at the police station, I walked straight to the desk officer with my evidence in hand, ready to do what needed to be done. How can I help you? The officer asked. A young man who couldn't have been more than 25 years old. I'm here to file a complaint for attempted murder, I said, putting the whiskey bottle on his desk. The young man straightened up in his chair. Attempted murder? Against whom?
Against me.
My son tried to kill me with this poisoned bottle.
Hold on, slow down. Sit down and tell me everything from the beginning.
We sat down and I told him the whole story from Michael's arrival in the morning to the confrontation at his house. The officer took notes, stopping every so often to ask for details. And do you have proof that the whiskey is poisoned? Frank Vasquez is hospitalized at Millbrook Regional. He drank 3 shots of this whiskey and got very sick. The doctors are going to run tests on him.
And where is your son now?
At his house, at 247 Maple Street in Brookside Heights. The officer wrote down the address and called the chief. Chief Rodriguez was an older man with a gray mustache who had known my brother.
Harold Thompson, Raul Thompson's brother, right?
Your brother was a good man. He listened to my story, examined the evidence, and made his decision quickly. Officer Hernandez, go get Michael Thompson. Take a patrol car and 2 more officers. He might be desperate. 3 hours later, after we'd given our formal statements, the chief returned with bad news. Harold, when they got to his house, he wasn't there. The neighbors say they saw his truck leave around 6 p.m., very fast.
He ran away.
It seems so, but we already have his description and his license plates.
He won't get far.
The chief continued. We did find Patricia Vasquez at her house. She's outside in the patrol car. And the doctor isn't at the clinic. His colleagues say he left early and didn't come back.
Another one who fled.
5 minutes later they brought in Patricia, handcuffed and crying. When she saw me, she looked down. Patricia Vasquez, the chief told her, you're accused of conspiracy to commit attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent and to have a lawyer. I didn't want to do anything wrong, Patricia murmured.
Then why did you do it? I asked her.
Mr. Thompson, Michael told me that you suffered a lot, that you wanted to die, that it was an act of love to help you.
Liar! Rose yelled.
My dad never said he wanted to die. Patricia insisted it was true, that Michael had told her I was depressed. Even if that were true, the chief intervened, that doesn't justify poisoning him. If a sick person wants to die, he kills himself.
He doesn't need help.
When I asked Patricia where Michael was, she said he'd fled in a panic, mentioning he might go to his cousin Bobby in Detroit who worked at Murphy's Garage on Michigan Avenue. The chief immediately contacted Detroit police to search for him there.
And what happens to me?
Patricia asked.
You reste in gander arresto.
Tomorrow we'll present you to the judge. As they took Patricia away, I realized this was no longer just about family betrayal. This had become a criminal case that would change everything forever.
Bring me Patricia.
5 minutes later they brought in Patricia, handcuffed. She looked pale, scared, and had been crying. When she saw me, she looked down. Patricia Vasquez, the chief told her. You're accused of conspiracy to commit attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent and to have a lawyer. I didn't want to do anything wrong, Patricia murmured.
Then why did you do it? I asked her.
Patricia looked at me with teary eyes. Mr. Thompson, Michael told me that you suffered a lot, that you wanted to die, that it was an act of love to help you.
Liar! Rose yelled.
My dad never said he wanted to die. It's true, Patricia insisted. Michael told me many times that you cried for your wife, that you didn't eat well, that you were depressed. Even if that were true, the chief intervened, that doesn't justify poisoning him. If a sick person wants to die, he kills himself.
He doesn't need help. And where is Michael?
I asked Patricia.
I don't know.
When you left the house, Michael went crazy. He said we had to run, that they were going to put us in jail. I told him no, that we should face the consequences instead. But he grabbed his suitcase and left.
Where did he go?
He didn't tell me. He just said he had to disappear for a while. The chief looked at her seriously. Patricia, if you cooperate with us, the judge will take it into account. If you tell us where Michael might be, things can be easier for you. Patricia stayed quiet for a moment, thinking. Michael has a cousin in Detroit. His name is Roberto, but they call him Bobby. He lives in the Corktown neighborhood. Michael always said that if he ever had problems, he'd go to Bobby's. Do you have the exact address? No, but I know he works at an auto shop called Murphy's Garage. It's on Michigan Avenue. The chief wrote everything in his notebook. Officer Hernandez, contact the Detroit police, have them look for Michael Thompson in that area.
And what happens to me?
Patricia asked.
You reste in gander arresto.
Tomorrow we'll present you to the judge. When they took Patricia away in handcuffs, I sat there watching all the movement at the police station. Police officers coming and going, phones ringing, typewriters making noise, All because of my son.
Dad, Rose said to me, let's go home.
We've done what we had to do. Yes, Javier added, tomorrow we'll continue with this. I stood up from the chair. Chief, will you let me know when you find Michael? Of course, Harold. And don't worry, we're going to find him. Those who run always make mistakes. When we left the police station, it was already night. Millbrook looked different, like it had changed during those hours we spent inside. Or maybe it was me who had changed. I was no longer the same man who had woken up that morning expecting birthday congratulations. Now I was a man who had reported his own son for attempted murder. But as we walked to our trucks, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel: relief. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe freely. Michael's strange questions, his calculating looks, his sudden interest in my finances, all of that made sense now. And now, finally, I had done something about it. Dad, Rose said, putting her hand on my shoulder, are you okay? I'm better than I've been in a long time, sweetheart. Really? Really? For months I felt like something was wrong, like Michael was planning something. Now I know what it was, and now I've done something about it. Javier nodded. You did the right thing, Dad. It took courage. It didn't take courage, son. It took necessity.
When Someone tries to kill you, you defend yourself.
Even if it's your own son. We got in our trucks and headed home. As I drove through the familiar streets of Millbrook, past the old Methodist church where Dorothy and I got married, past the elementary school where all three of my kids learned to read, past Murphy's Diner where we used to go for pancakes on Sunday mornings, I realized that this was the end of one chapter of my life and the beginning of another. The chapter where I was the father of 3 children was over. Now I was the father of 2 children and the victim of a crime committed by a stranger who used to be my son. 2 days later, Chief Rodriguez called me early in the morning. His voice sounded serious, official, like when he had to give important news. Harold, we brought Michael back from Detroit. He's here at the station. Do you want to come see him? I stayed quiet for a moment with the phone in my hand. I wanted to see him. Part of me was curious to know what face he had now, after being arrested like a common criminal. Another part of me didn't want to see him ever again in my life. Yes, Chief, I'm going over there.
Come alone, Harold.
It's better. When I arrived at the station, the atmosphere was different from the other day. There was more movement, more police officers, more prisoners. The chief was waiting for me in his office with a serious face. How is he? I asked, though honestly I didn't know if I cared about the answer.
Bad.
Very bad. He hasn't eaten since we brought him in. He hasn't slept. He just keeps crying and saying he wants to talk to you. To me? What for?
He don't know.
He says he has important things to tell you. I sat in the chair in front of the chief's desk. And Dr. Rodriguez, did he talk? Did he tell us everything? Oh yes, Harold, that one talked. He told us everything. How Patricia got the pentobarbital from the hospital where she works, how Michael contacted him to ask about lethal doses, how they planned the whole operation for weeks. Weeks? Yes, Harold, this wasn't something they thought up overnight. They planned it for more than a month. That hurt me more than anything else I'd heard.
Michael hadn't acted on impulse, out of desperation, in a moment of madness.
He had planned my death for weeks. He had thought about killing me every day for a whole month. And what else did he say? The doctor said that Michael's original idea was to make it look like you'd had a heart attack while sleeping. But Patricia told him it was too risky, that the coroners might find evidence. So they decided to use alcohol poisoning to make it look like an accident. And how much money were they expecting to get from this? According to the doctor, Michael told him you had about $150,000 saved, plus the value of your house. Divided among the 3 children, He would inherit about $100,000. $100,000. He was going to kill me for that. Apparently, Michael has very large debts. He owes money to a lot of people. His business has been bankrupt for months. Why didn't he ever ask me for help? If he needed money, I would have lent it to him. Because that way he wasn't going to get all the money, only a part. And besides, according to the doctor, Patricia convinced him it was better to solve the problem at the root. I stayed quiet, processing all that information. My son had calculated my death like a business operation. He had put a price on my life, $100,000. The irony wasn't lost on me. If Michael had simply asked for help instead of trying to murder me, I could have solved his debt problems without even straining my finances. But he'd chosen the path of a criminal instead of the path of a son. "Do you want to see him?" the chief asked me. "Yes, I want to hear what he has to say to me." "Okay, but we'll have to do it in the interrogation room with an officer present." "No problem." The chief called an officer and led me down a long hallway to a small room with gray walls and a metal table in the center. "Wait here. We'll bring him in 5 minutes." I sat in an uncomfortable chair and waited. My heart was beating fast, not from nerves, but from anger. I had many things to say to Michael, many questions to ask him. When they opened the door, I almost didn't recognize him. Michael had aged 10 years in 3 days. He had a grown-out beard, deep dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled clothes, and walked like his whole body was heavy. He came in handcuffed and accompanied by 2 officers. "Dad," he murmured when he saw me and started crying. "Sit down," I told him without emotion in my voice. He sat across from me, still crying. The officers stood by the door. "Dad, I don't know how to explain to you." "Don't explain anything to me, Michael.
Just answer what he asks you.
Okay. First question. Why? Because I have a lot of debts, Dad. The business is bankrupt. I owe money to a lot of people." "How much do you owe?" $250,000. "And for that you were going to kill me?" Michael kept crying. "It wasn't just for that, Dad. Patricia told me that you weren't happy anymore, that you suffered a lot since Mom died, that it was an act of love to help you rest."
"Lie."
I yelled, standing up from the chair.
"Dette pure lies."
"I never told you I wanted to die. But I saw you sad, Dad. All old people are sad, Michael. That doesn't mean they want to die."
He sat back down, breathing deeply to control myself.
Second question.
"How long did you plan it?"
"About 6 weeks."
6 weeks thinking about how to kill me?
"Yes. And in those 6 weeks it never occurred to you to talk to me, ask me for help, tell me you had problems." "Yes, it occurred to me, but Patricia said you wouldn't understand, that you'd think I was a failure." "Michael, I worked 40 years as a welder. Do you think I don't understand what debts are, what money problems are? But there were a lot of debts, Dad. I don't care how many there were. We could have solved them together, but you preferred to kill me."
Michael cried harder now. "Forgive me, Dad. Please forgive me."
"I'm not going to forgive you, Michael, and I'll tell you why." I stood up and walked around the table until I was standing behind him. "I'm not going to forgive you because Frank is in the hospital. Because of you, he's going to have health problems for life."
"Because of you."
"I didn't want Frank to."
"He don't care what you wanted."
"What matters is what you did." I returned to my chair. "I'm not going to forgive you because when I confronted you at your house, you didn't show repentance, only panic because you'd been caught."
"He was repentant, Dad."
"No,
Michael."
Repentance is when you recognize you did something wrong and want to repair the damage. Panic is when you only worry because you're going to be punished.
You're right.
And above all, I'm not going to forgive you because when you had the chance to face what you'd done like a man, you chose to run like a coward. Michael stayed quiet. Do you know what hurts me most about all this, Michael?
What?
That for 42 years I believed you were my son, that I had raised a good, hard-working, honest man, that my work as a father had been worth it.
I am your son, Dad.
No, you're not my son. My son would never have done this to me. My son would have asked me for help before trying to kill me. My son would have faced his mistakes like a man. He wouldn't have run away like a thief.
Dad, please.
The person sitting in front of me is a stranger, a criminal, a coward. But he's not my son. Michael stood up desperately.
Dad, I'm your son.
I'm Michael, the one who helped you in the workshop when I was a kid. The one who played football with you in the yard. That child died, Michael. You killed him when you decided to poison me.
Don't say that. It's the truth.
And here's the proof. When I was a kid and did something wrong, my dad would punish me, but then he'd forgive me because he knew I'd learned my lesson. But you're not my little boy. You're an adult criminal who knew perfectly well what he was doing. And criminals don't go to their dad when they have problems. They go to jail. Michael collapsed in his chair, defeated. What's going to happen to me, Dad? I don't know, Michael, and it's not my problem anymore. Are you going to go to my trial? I'm going to go testify against you so the judge knows exactly what you did and punishes you like you deserve. And then you go your way and I go mine, like strangers. I stood up from the chair and walked toward the door.
Dad, wait.
I turned around one last time.
Don't call me Dad anymore, Michael. You don't have a father anymore.
And I left the room without looking back. 3 months later came the day of the trial. The courthouse was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and law students. Frank's family was there too, and Frank himself in a wheelchair, still recovering from the pentobarbital damage. I testified for 3 hours, telling the whole truth without exaggeration. Frank testified with difficulty, his speech still affected, showing everyone the permanent damage Michael had caused. Patricia testified crying, still insisting it had been out of love. Dr. Rodriguez confessed everything and asked for clemency. Finally, Michael took the stand, asking for forgiveness and claiming it had been a terrible mistake. But when the prosecutor asked why he'd fled if he really repented, Michael went quiet. Judge Williams delivered the sentence with a firm voice. Michael Thompson, guilty of attempted murder in the first degree. Sentence: 22 years in prison without possibility of parole before serving 15 effective years.
Patricia Vasquez, 12 years in prison.
Dr. Rodriguez, 8 years in prison. Additionally, the 3 defendants must pay jointly $300,000 to Frank Vasquez for damages. 22 years.
When Michael got out, Eddie be 64.
After the sentence, Michael stood up and asked, "Dad, do you forgive me?" The whole courtroom went silent. I stood up slowly and walked toward him. "Michael," I said clearly so everyone could hear, "I raised 3 children, Rose, Javier, and a boy named Michael. That boy was good, hard-working, respectful. But that boy died 3 months ago when he decided to poison me. The person standing in front of me is not my son. He's a criminal who used a father's love to try to kill him. So no, I don't forgive you, because forgiveness is for children, and you're no longer my child." They took Michael away in handcuffs, and that was the last time I saw him. A year later, on my 74th birthday, I woke up surrounded by real family. Rose with her children, Javier with his wife, and Frank, who had recovered enough to walk with a cane. We had breakfast on the porch, the grandchildren running between the tomato plants, real laughter filling the air. As I watched my real family, I realized that sometimes losing a child who was never really your child is the only way to appreciate the children who truly are. If this story reminded you to never judge by appearances, leave me a comment telling me about your experience. Don't forget to subscribe because this old grandpa has many more life lessons to share.